I'm Richard Dalton, Pastor Richard Dalton from St. Louis. Currently I'm pastoring beloved Community United Methodist Church in the St. Louis Ferguson area.
We know that you have been working with impoverished communities your whole life and just tough areas. So what really drew you to that part of ministry?
Well, it's actually something I wasn't looking for. When I became a Christian and got saved, I just really wanted to serve and to help. And any church that I would pastor would have been fine with me. But it always seemed like church after church after church I had was in a very poor, distressed area, poor housing, poor schools, and that kind of thing. So I kind of cut my teeth over the years on urban ministry. Yeah.
So your most recent and current project is called the Joshua Project. Could you describe how that works and how it's functioning right now in the community?
Sure, I'd be glad to. The Joshua Project is a faith-based neighborhood redevelopment project for distressed areas. So what we do is pull together an alliance, a collaborative in a neighborhood, and get them to work as a team to try to redevelop that neighborhood. And suppose there's a lot of resources in different areas, but sometimes those agencies don't network and work together in one target area. We're saying, hey, be neighborhood specific. Pastor, where's your church located? It's over by Whitfield Academy. Okay, how many churches in that area? Oh, it's about 7. Okay, could you talk to those pastors and see if we can come together, have a meeting, and then lay out a plan around Whitfield Academy, just for example. Yeah.
So this has to be more than just community service. It's really changing the way that these churches are operating completely.
Well, it's really, I think, the model of Jesus. Yeah. Jesus built relationships. You know, he didn't just tell people to come to the synagogue on Saturday. He was out there building relationships. And just because the church has a program in a poor area does not mean that church is building relationships. It's just handing things out to people, and then they get out of the neighborhood as quickly as possible.
So the Joshua Project, did that get its name from Joshua in the Bible, or was it?
Definitely. Definitely. If you read the first chapter of Joshua, Moses has died, and Joshua took over. And in those first 9 verses, God tells Joshua, he said, every place you put your foot, I'm going to give it to you. But you have to fight. You have to be very courageous. So the Joshua Project is we're putting our foot in these distressed areas and taking that land, that neighborhood back for the kingdom of God.
Why do you think that there's a lack of understanding about these communities and people are unwilling to go there or not really comprehend the problems that are happening?
I think the model of church in terms of four-wall ministry has become so internalized. I think we've just lost contact with the culture around us to some extent and how to engage with that culture. And here again, pastors are not trained on how to engage with a culture that's different than theirs. You know what I mean? Yes. So I think as long as people have a comfort zone and are not willing to take risks, which I think probably most churches are not willing to do, you're going to have people who are marginalized because people don't live there and see what's happening. A stereotype develops, and it's fueled by the media. There was a movie out some years ago called Menace to Society, and the Menace to Society were these young boys that were like the young man I described to you, and of course they are menace to society when they're doing the wrong thing. But all of the young men in these communities are not as negative as the media projects. So if you're sitting watching TV and you hear about somebody getting shot and you think, what's wrong with those people? You're only seeing what the media shows you on TV, like CNN. Somebody had to edit that and make it appealing to you, and feed into your fear or feed into your stereotype. I think that's the way when they do commercials on those CNN news shows, they got to have somebody there to buy the products if they can pull you in with these stories. So you got to be there. So I don't think it's a fair reflection of the families, the young boys, the children that live in these marginalized communities, in these poor communities. So we have to, I think, as responsible Christians, we have to use critical thinking when we watch the news anyway. But particularly when it feeds into a stereotype or a perception that's already there.
I know there's a lot of government programs in place to fix this. What do you think is the difference between the church going and doing it versus the government, or possibly why could the church fix it and the government could not?
Well, see, as a church, if we make the greatest claim every Sunday, I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. God is able. We have all this worship and all these things that affirm how powerful God is. But we don't really, I don't think a lot of us really believe it, because we don't step into it and ask God to express His power in a bad situation through us.
With all the current law enforcement situations and the police violence, do you guys work with any type of law enforcement, or do you think there needs to be a change in that program?
Well, yes, we are working. I think it's key. You have to work with law enforcement, no matter what. There's bad apples in every barrel. There's bad preachers, there's bad businessmen, there's bad students. It's bad everything. But we can't stereotype that community. Particularly, they are called to protect us. So we got to work with them, no matter what has happened, like what happened in Ferguson. But so what we're going to do in this Joshua project is build within the neighborhood again a community police relations council, where all the groups come together and talk about how can the neighborhood and community relate better to the police, and how the police can relate better to the neighborhood, and have some accountability. And I would venture to say, if that had been there in Canfield Green when Michael Brown was killed, I don't think it would have happened. They were the police and the community alienated. They became enemies.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think would be some of the best ways for us to really go and make a change like you and your project have done?
First, pray. But other than that, look for opportunities to serve or just observe. Just go in and if there's churches there, introduce yourself to the pastor, the people in that church community. Tell them, maybe I'm from Woodville Academy, I want to learn more about your neighborhood. And that would be maybe a starting point of getting educated and really finding out what's going on, because they would be the link between people who normally don't go to those places in terms of helping them to embrace those kind of situations. But it's hard for anybody.